Kamala will announce VP on Tuesday in Philly. Next Trump collab. Bro, you're missing it? No, I'm gonna go into it right now. I'm not missing shit. Chill. Killing high profile, heating up tensions, and more. Get it. Will you talk about Beirut? Congrats on your $6 million appraisal, by the way. Thank you, Aiden Ross, my real estate agent. Dr. Disrespect is back. We'll talk about that as well briefly. There's also like the madness happening on Twitter in terms of like Moist Critical being canceled, which is so stupid. We'll talk about all of that and more in a brief moment. He just said Kamala Harris is not black. That's crazy.
There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well, you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why
that's the Fox
today.
lady.
I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that.
He has a feeling.
Everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country, and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs, and frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions, from prisons, from jails. They're gang members in other countries. Other countries are setting loose their prisoners. They're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers, gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way, their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Blast off, folks. Here's the blast off. We already dove into the Trump shit, but let the people know that we're alive, okay? I wanted to get right into it.
We live in communities of color that are different. We're not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same.
True.
It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk about something that bursts, and this is the weight of the
Cover Venezuela, please.
Right
I did
now.
Yesterday, man. Shut up.
The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single black moms, when you look statistically. Yeah. How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, you know, this woman was unable to get the right equipment. But it's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear every other word. It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating. And if you just take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country, and it's destroying the black community probably as much or more.
So what do you do?
Than any.
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls, and then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, you know, let's keep going, and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight, a prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing well. You say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him. And now we have to steer it to her. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker, the black population, and every other population within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr. President, can I ask you another question
Yes,
that is also impacting black Americans?
And that's very clear now. Good.
I'm sorry?
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, someone from Illinois, an unarmed black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You've said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water, right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either.
Okay.
But again, why would...
Are they going to be charging the officer? I guess they're charging the officer.
He's like, because I'm racist.
Well, he might not.
That's why I defended it.
It depends on what happens. I'm talking about people that are much different cases than that. We need people to protect ourselves. And by the way, in Chicago, as an example, a few weeks ago,
talk about black on black crime, dude. Go ahead.
117 shootings and 17 deaths. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me.
No, this is really good.
I didn't like it at all.
So, can you get a little more specific back to...
Yeah, the solution to Chicago's gun violence is more policing. That's...
For the most part, people are protected by their
sorry,
unions, by their police.
not even more policing, but giving police more respect and dignity.
Or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake.
What you need to understand here, right now, and I'm going to give you commentary, don't yell at me. Trump is trying to message to black men, okay? He made some gains with black men, okay? He's trying to lean into that. The campaign is trying to like make more gains in that on that front, and that's why they're ramping up misogyny. It's just for men in general. It's across the board. It's the same. It's the same gains that they've made in men across the board towards
from the
specifically
standpoint
non-college
of-
educated
They
men.
made a mistake.
Problem here is
I wanna
he
follow
also
up
has a
really
very
quickly.
active white supremacist base.
I find it
So
interesting
he needs to
because you do
go,
talk about
he needs to dance
reining
between
in,
this line where he's like,
prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you.
he
Why
is
doesn't
trying to
that
dance
skepticism
between this
apply
line where
to
he's
law
like
enforcement?
kind of
Well, I've been
racist enough,
prosecuted because
but not
political
so
opponents
racist
of
that
two
like he can
people that
still
have
bring
weaponized our
up some
justice system. I've been prosecuted.
he can
I
still
just
bring
won
over
the
some
big
black
case
men
in
to his
Florida.
side
Everyone said that
in
was
terms
the
of voting
biggest
for
case.
him.
That was the most difficult case, and I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time, and he had 50 years worth of documents, and they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent, and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We cover you extensively, sir.
Sloppodopoulos.
I'd love to move over onto
I
different
didn't notice
topics
you
now.
do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where
Sir,
I
if
have
you
a
don't mind, I'd
hostile
love
judge.
to. We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different
No,
topics.
excuse you.
if we
You're the
can.
one that held me up at 35 minutes, just so you understand.
If we can move on now to the state of the race, sir, I want to get back to the campaign. Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before?
Ooh, that's a great way to ask that question. Oh my God, what a great way to ask that question.
He is very family oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing.
Of course, he's not going to answer it, but it's a great framing on
I
that.
know people with families. I know
God,
people
journalists.
with great families. I know people with very troubled families, and I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking
Excuse
about
me.
families here.
And
He also
some of
says that
those
people that don't have children should get less votes than
That's
those
all right.
that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
that your
and I
campaign
think
position?
I'm speaking for him too. He strongly believes in family, but I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family, and the people
With
without
bad
the family
families.
are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet and would have been good, that that's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him, actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family-oriented, but that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just
Mr.
one last
President?
point, and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator J.D. Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children. I just want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but it's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time, that have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happen. If I am, you're not going to have any problem. But you're going to see it happening a long time. You're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs to people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that vice president question, candidate question was right in there with that. So let's talk about J.D. Vance for a little bit. He's had some stumbles out of the gate. I don't know if you're hearing what we hear as reporters, but it's been a tough couple of weeks for him. Why did you choose J.D. Vance?
Why didn't I?
Why did you choose him? And I'm having a hard time hearing, too.
I chose
know
him
everybody
because-
out there can, but it's hard
I'll tell
to
you
hear.
why. I chose him because he's a very strong believer in work and the working man and woman, and especially the working man and woman who have been treated very unfairly, because you have many of them many of them in this room. But you have many of those people, they were treated very unfairly. They worked very hard and they were treated unfairly. He wrote the book that became a bestseller. The movie became a smash hit. He's a very smart guy without the benefit of having a family that has contacts, like a father that was well connected. He got into Yale Law School. He graduated in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude. I mean, you take a look at, his career has been an amazing career. He started off at a level with a difficult family situation, very difficult with the mother and the father and everything else. He ends up going to Yale Law School and was one of the top students, became the head of the law journal. I mean, that's an amazing thing. He's a 4-year, he was in the military with great distinction for 4 years, got out, went into business, became successful in business, very successful in business, actually. Did public offerings and other things. And I have to believe in that. I mean, he's somebody that was born in a rough situation. Most of the people know that situation because it was very well documented in his book. And I have a lot of respect for somebody that can get into Yale and become one of the best students in Yale, that meets a young woman at Yale who was also outstanding, and they get married, they have a beautiful family. But he had he's made himself an amazing life. He then goes to Ohio, lives in Ohio, and he had my endorsement. That helped. But he wins the Senate. He becomes a United States Senator. So he's a United States Senator. So Harris, like I respect you for your success, I respect people for their success.
The reason I asked the question is because the last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
And 2 days after that...
I cannot understand. Your microphone
I know,
is so
it is
muffled.
really hard for me to understand you, too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you.
I'm happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
Really happy to hear
understand.
that.
Whoa.
I have a few more questions.
Because of the distance, and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
Are you asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring. You choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris. And that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at J.D. Vance, is he ready on day one?
He's just so horrible. Can't even be a decent human being for 1 second. It's so sad, man.
I've always had
Bro,
great
so
respect
many
for
Americans
him.
support this demon. I hate it. Brother, you need to
And for the other
understand.
candidates, but I will say this.
There's a lot of pieces
think
of shit
this
out
is
there.
well
And also, there's a
documented.
lot of people who are nice but very
Historically, the
angry.
Vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact.
There's just a
You
lot
have
of
2 or
bad
3
people out
days
there,
where
man.
There's
That's
a lot
it.
of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think J.D. is. I think that all of them would have been. But you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in.
J.D. Vance?
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, well, I mean, my point is here.
But at least it was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying?
I don't think, look, I think that the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the
But I
death.
think it's
They're
about
allowing
freedom,
the death of a baby after the baby is born, based on governor of Virginia. Based on the governor of Virginia, they're allowing the death of the baby after it's born. They're allowing abortions in the 8th and 9th month.
Well, Democrats have denied.
I think they're right. And I think the Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps. But the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservative, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it, everybody.
But the majority of Americans oppose Roe v. Wade being overturned.
They don't know about this. Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Ronald Reagan
Moscans don't know about it.
Incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing, out of the federal government, it's in states, and people are voting. And I will say, Ohio is, let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing, a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But the people are now voting, and it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our
Bro, it was literally
apart,
it was literally set. It was not torn apart. This is just an abject lie.
Many states have already
75% of the country consistently polled on this issue said Roe v. Wade is good. It was considered to be a super precedent.
You have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions.
The fucking Supreme Court justices he put on there lied.
But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of...
every part of the Trump rhetoric is just built on lies. It makes me so fucking mad when I listen to him over an extended period of time. I forgot how much he fucking pissed me off. Like, immigrants are rapists, drug dealers, whatever, lie, okay? The exact opposite is the truth, okay? The like 90+% of drugs being shipped over the fucking border are apprehended at regular points of entry by American citizens. American citizens are the ones who are trafficking the drugs into the country, okay? So that's just an immediate lie. Undocumented migrants are responsible for less crime than documented U.S. citizens, okay? Natural-born U.S. citizens. So that's another lie. The notion that, like, kids were actually upset about Roe v. Wade, also a lie. No, I'm not going to give you an analysis after it finishes. I have to do it in real time, okay? Because I don't want to forget.
The world history, the greatest leaders, some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question. Would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining? Or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would make,
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
Oh my goodness.
me, and I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That was a nasty, that wasn't a question. She didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I mean, this is classic Trump, though.
You said you would. You would
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If
to
I
step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them.
Well,
I took 2 of them. But let me ask.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president, and I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this gentleman, and our country is a mess. We have inflation. We have the millions of people falling in. We have Afghanistan, which was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. What he has done to our country, and her too, what they've done to our country, she has been a horrible vice president. She's considered the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Mr.
Don't mean to
President,
interrupt you, but would you consider taking the cognitive test?
Mr. President,
I would love to
and
do
make
it.
it public.
Well, I've already taken 2 of them, but I'll do it again.
Mr. President, how do you intend to...
I suggested, Harris, that let's take one. I said, Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her, too. I would do it with her also. You know what? She failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President,
Are you saying she wouldn't pass? Just to be clear,
I'm just giving you the facts.
to be clear, you don't think Harris would
how
pass
do
it?
you intend,
She
and
didn't
look,
pass her bar exam, and she didn't think she would pass it, and she didn't think she was going to ever pass it. And I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it. I
She
guess
did pass it.
There's a
She
man
did-
over
she
here.
did
I
in
think
fact pass
he
it.
must work for
Mr.
her.
President, I would love to ask you about January 6th. You've called yourself the candidate of law and order.
Yeah.
When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
You called them patriots. 140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones, at least one officer lost an eye, one had 2 cracked ribs, 2 smashed spinal discs, another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol.
What?
You saw the people that were protesting and
What?
spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone.
He's saying that the Benjamin Netanyahu protests are worse than
spray
January
paint
6th.
That will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never. I'm a builder. I know about
This is why
stuff.
Democrats are
It'll
so
never- you'll see
stupid
it
on
in
the
100
Israel
years
issue,
from now.
okay?
They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed
But sir, my
that
question
city?
is on those.
What's going to happen to
my
the people
question is
that
on
tried
those
to burn
rioters
down-
who assaulted
Excuse me.
officers.
You have to
Would
answer.
you pardon
What's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You
If
would
they're
pardon
innocent,
those-
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been
And
convicted.
by the way, the Supreme Court just they were convicted by a very, very tough system. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis, how come the people that took over
There were tens of thousands of arrests and convictions in the BLM protests.
But sir,
people
we're
that-
talking about
how
people
come
that
the
were
people-
seen
no, no,
beating
no. We're
officers
talking
with
about federal
flagpoles,
buildings.
dragging them down the stairs. They're on
They
video.
try-
Have you seen that
Really?
video,
Oh,
sir?
really? Well, they
you would
shot-
pardon those. You would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was testing. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in
140
Minneapolis.
officers
Do you know
were
people died in
assaulted that
Minneapolis?
day.
And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look,
What?
No one was
nothing
ushering.
is perfect in life, but you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C. They were having fistfights and fighting with the police.
I love
They
Donald
were
Trump's
spraying and
idea
destroying- they
that
were
like anyone who
desecrating
opposes me
our
needs the most
monuments in
violent
Washington,
apprehension
D.C.
from the law.
5 days ago.
I'm
And
law and
nothing
order for
happened
like
to them.
black people, brown
And you have
people,
to- you can't have two
Palestinians, and I
systems.
only
That's
want
why they
leniency
went
for
after
my
me as a
fans.
political opponent,
Like he
because they
very
felt they
openly
couldn't
is
win
like,
without doing that.
it's a brutal
And we're
system,
gonna win our
very
cases, and
brutal
we're gonna be
towards my
vindicated, but I have to
fans,
spend a
but
lot of time
also
on
we
that
have to
and money.
kill
That's what
these
they want.
fucking
After the
pro-Palestinian
election, they won't get-
protesters.
although in
It
my
is
case, I
so
think they probably will, because the
flagrant.
hatred
It's
is
so
pretty deep.
obvious what
But I'll
he's
tell you,
saying. It's
they
just
went
like,
after me as a
yeah,
political
dog,
opponent.
if you're like a
That's
right-wing
never happened
Republican
in
and a
our
white
country
guy,
before, and it's
you
such a
shouldn't go to
terrible,
jail.
terrible precedent.
Okay? If you're
do you do on
protesting
day
police
one if you
brutality, if you're
what's your
protesting
first
like
thing?
Israel's
do I
genocide,
do?
you should be
I
killed.
close the border. And I do two things, because I can do a lot of things simultaneously. I close the border. We don't want people coming in. We want people to come in, Harris, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. They have to come in legally. We want
Legal,
people. I want
yeah.
people to come into our country, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. So when you say, what do? That, and I drill, baby, drill. I bring energy way down. I bring interest rates down. I bring inflation way down, so people can buy bacon again. So people can buy.
He's a
ham
fascist
sandwich
and a
again,
leftist.
So that
Yeah.
people can go to a restaurant and afford it. Because right now, people can't buy food. Your grocery bills are up 40, 50, 60%, right? She's agreeing to me. Oh, she's agreeing. Thank
Oh.
you very much.
Mr. President, I think we are.
But it's true. Your grocery bills are up. And then they're mandating that you buy an all-electric car.
Dude, he
You know,
is so
Elon
bad
Musk endorsed me,
at
and he's
this.
a
He is
friend of
not
mine.
good
He's
at
a good
this.
guy. He's a smart guy. But I'm against everybody having an electric car, okay? I'm very much against that. You have to be able to, if you want a hybrid or if you want a gasoline-propelled car, but You know, we have more liquid gold, gasoline,
I mean,
oil
he's very
under our
entertaining,
feet
though.
than any other country, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than any other country. I want to use it. I want to use what we have. I want to bring down prices, bring down costs, and I also have to stop the invasion.
Listen. The thing is, this is entertaining for me, at least. I don't know if you guys find it entertaining because he's getting fucking grilled. But also, one aspect of this is like the reason why he made this appearance is something that you have to add. Oh, let's see the last question and I'll get to the.
Well, thank you very much.
They've been telling us.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, very much. Great honor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
NABJ will email about details regarding the conversation with Vice President Kamala.
So here's one thing that I have to stress here, okay? Donald Trump went to this specifically because the Republican Party currently thinks that there's an avenue for them to pick some black male votes from the Democratic ticket, okay? This was a calculation that they were relying on to a certain degree when they were matched up against Joseph Robinette Biden. Now, having said that, it's just the same exact, I mean, it's like significantly less percentages, significantly smaller numbers than like the non-college educated white vote, okay? But it's from the main constituency of the Democratic Party that reliably votes Democrat historically, so it obviously has a larger impact. So that's his goal here. That's why he went. If you're wondering, like, why did he go to the National Association of Black Journalists? Like why did he do that? That's the reason, right? The problem, however, is that that's not exactly a great political calculation for him because the major base of support for the Trump party, for the Republican Party in general, historically, is racists. Like, we can play a song and dance around it and be like, what do you mean Republicans are racist? Democrats are the real racists? Like, come on. It's just, that's what it is. It's racist vitriol that works really fucking well for the most active parts of the Republican Party's base. That's why they cynically will defend Confederate soldiers and Confederate generals and all this shit, right? So the issue here is that, like, he can't appear too fucking woke. Like, most racist people still vote for him. And this looks good for racist people because he's, like, cooking and being really disrespectful and rude to black women, right? But the goal in this appearance is not to actually galvanize the base of support that was already going to fucking vote for him. Because if you're racist, of course you're going to vote for him. You know what I mean? Like, of course, you're already there. You're already in the pocket. You're already in the fucking 30% Trump cult, right? And the goal here is to basically be able to present himself in a somewhat presentable way to black men, okay? That's what his goal is here. Now, I'm not saying that this is a successful strategy. I'm not even saying, like, I'm not one of those people that's claiming, like, oh, black men are voting in droves for the Republican Party. No, it's just the same exact shit that has been happening with men in general, okay? Like, there is a massive gender gap between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in terms of male voters, okay? That's just the reality. They respond to machismo, but the Republicans don't understand that if you fucking hit it too hard, if you hit this line too hard and in a weird way, in a gross way, in the same way that JD Vance has been, then you're actually going to come across like really, you're just going to come across as somewhat toxic, right? Trump does a much better job at playing this tightrope than JD Vance does, than, you know, Tim Pool does, than all the Republican commentators do in general. But what he did today, I think, was unsuccessful in terms of like bringing a larger black male voter constituency to the Republican Party. That was the goal, and he failed on that goal. It'll look great for Fox News. He'll be like, he's a big fighter. Look at him. He's just like absolutely eviscerating these sassy women. You know what I mean? Like, but ultimately, it's also kind of a setup because like the way he operates around black women who are, you know, being contentious is kind of a matchup for how the public will read how he operates towards Kamala Harris, who's also a black woman who's going to be contentious towards him, right? So ultimately, I think his reaction to the way that the way that they were grilling him is not great. Like, he's not coming across smooth. He's not coming across confident. And he's coming across as desperate, flailing, and very aggressive. Now, that works really well, like I said, with non-college educated men in general. He's owning a woman, right? He's owning a black woman, even better. But will that look good? Will that look good to the base of support that he's trying to capture there? I don't think so. That's it. Like, it's not, I think that people that see the way he behaves and see the way he responds, especially, I would say, black men that see the way he behaves and the way he responds, will be left with a sour taste in their mouths, even if they were like kind of teetering on the edge of potential Trump support, due to like some of the factors that the rest of the non-college educated male vote goes for Trump. Okay? That's what I think. I think that he comes across as like being super fucking aggro. I mean, there were moments where he just openly was just like, yeah, no, we should institute leniency for my supporters during January 6th. But yeah, if you were doing BLM riots, BLM protests, then fuck you. You should be killed. Like, it's just like, that's so obvious. That's such an obvious fucking double standard that you're demonstrating, where you're like, the criminal justice system is so aggressive, you know, so goddamn aggressive towards January 6ers or patriots, but also simultaneously not aggressive enough at the top of the hour when there's a 3-minute ad break. And the ad break avoiders that don't subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime don't get punished nearly enough with a 3-minute ad break. Now, if you want to be a law-abiding citizen, that's all you need to do. Maybe you can also get gifted a sub. If you're lucky, here's a 3-minute ad break now. Because at the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. Do you think Harris's speech got Hamas leader killed? What? No. Can you define hog? I hear you saying it all the time, and then you were talking about Jewish hogs the other day, and I realized I don't know who falls under the hog label. Thanks, brother. Hog just means conservative, and oftentimes religious fundamentalist. It just means conservative, reactionary. There are hogs of all different backgrounds, all different shapes, sizes, and varieties, but there is this like universality. There is this universality to hog culture in general that I find really fun to browse through, to develop a deeper understanding of. I'm fascinated with reactionaries, as you guys know, but hogs come in all different shapes, colors, sizes, all around the planet. They just happen to be very right-wing. And I don't think a lot of Americans recognize that, or a lot of people just don't recognize that, like, there is a universality to the hogs. I mean, the fact that he did that in front of a room of journalists and they were already souring on him and praising Harris for the last 2 weeks, he has to change the media narrative to break the cycle. He just made it worse. I agree. Thoughts on killing the leader responsible for the negotiations after saying U.S. saying Hamas is the one blocking the deal? Oh, don't worry. I got all the smoke for that too. Don't fucking worry. I'm going to talk about that as well. There's a lot going on in the world. We got the Dr. Disrespect shit too. We got Moist Critical drama. We got Dr. Disrespect coming back and just hitting the fucking right-wing pipeline. Pokelaw says, have a great day, Hassan. No, you have a great day, Pokelaws. Pokelaw's my goat. But yeah, I have, we'll talk about Venezuela a little bit more as well. Who cares about that, my man? I know. Well, you know how it is. If I don't cover fucking YouTube drama, people will come after me. People will kill me. Okay. No basketball takes before we dive into the news. We are going to be talking about Israel as well in a little bit. But I just wanted to get started. We went in hot. But the National Association of Black Journalists had Donald Trump on earlier today. The National Association of Black Journalists had Donald Trump on. We watched it. We watched parts of it, at least. Like, we watched it towards the end. And he just gave a spectacular performance. I mean, just the all-time performance from Donald Trump, showcasing that he is not exactly the best at dealing with contentious interviews, especially in a relatively hostile environment. I wish, maybe I'm wrong for saying this, but I wish that there was, like, at least on the aesthetic front, if there was like at least one black male journalist on there who was also cooking him, or at least like a centrist, it would look even worse for him overall. Because his goal here is literally to captivate or to capture any kind of black male voters that he can potentially go after, but it's a fucking dud anyway. That, I think, was the old method against Joe Biden. That's not going to work against Kamala Harris, especially when the entire Republican Party is just running the DEI narrative, which is something that every black person, every brown person, every person that's not white has heard a million times over in their lives. So it's just an immediate reminder of what that is. It's like affirmative action, CRT, DEI, woke. These are all substitutes for basically saying you don't deserve your position because a white person deserves your position. You actually were only appointed to your position due to your skin color. It's just a reminder of that white supremacist narrative. And if he doesn't fucking, if he doesn't try to address that in a better way, if he doesn't have a good enough counter to that, if he doesn't have a good enough way to move away from that and like talk about Kamala Harris's qualifications, okay, he's not going to be able to captivate. I mean, he's going to negatively polarize people against him, people that he's trying to actually win over to his side.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them...
By the way, every single thing that she's saying is true. You might be like, oh, well, she obviously has an agenda, but it's like, but it's true. He did do all of those things, okay? Like, her bias in this situation is completely irrelevant to the points that she's making, because the points that she's making are absolutely correct, okay?
Loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question.
Doesn't he call white journalists losers and call their questions as well? No, he definitely does do that. But when you're so consistently fucking saying that like a black woman is a rabid animal, like a black DA is a rabid animal over and over again, like it's a little bit racially motivated, right? Like context and nuance is important in these situations, right? You don't call a woman a bitch or a cocksucker. You call a woman a dick. Right? When you call a woman a bitch, it's a little bit different. Okay? That's number one. Number two, like I call myself an ape or a monkey regularly, right? But obviously, if you were to do that to a black person, everybody understands what you're doing. Contextually, something that might be appropriate in one situation is not going to be appropriate in another situation. One is unimaginably racist. The other one is just, jokes. Okay? So that's the difference there in terms of like Donald Trump obviously having all the smoke for journalists across the board. Having said that, however, Donald Trump has been extra racially animated in terms of dealing with people of color that are at odds with him. Okay?
You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and, and I say this.
Dude, I love the black population. Dude, also, like, 60-plus-year-old white men can never navigate this situation correctly in general. It's like a it's like losing ground regardless. It's like when people will come into my chat and be like, Hassan, you never have black women on as your guests, or you never have black people on as your guests. It's like, there is no effective counter to that. You just have to be like, dude, shut the fuck up and move on, right? Because what am I supposed to say to that? Turn around and be like, oh no, here are all the black people that I've had on my show? Like, that's a ridiculous fucking, you just immediately, you're like, you're being fucking weird and racist, okay? And it's true. Like, it is. And especially when you're like a 60-plus-year-old white dude, when you're like a 60-plus-year-old white dude, and Joe Biden was really bad on this too, you just always come across like you're saying, I got binders full of blacks in my cabinet, which is what Joe Biden basically said. If you recall, on the BET interview that he conducted, he was basically like, I have so many blacks. I have so many blacks, which is, it's never a good look, okay? It's just never a good look. It's like something that is not going to be easy to address, and, you know, there's not really anything you could do. It's a, you know, you're in a bind in that situation. But Trump, on the other hand, tries to be like, listen, I'm the president. You could just, the only way that if you're Trump to answer this question, the only way to do it is like, listen, I was the president. Okay. I was the president of all Americans. Okay. That includes black Americans as well. Here are some of the policy positions that I pushed for. You know what I mean? Instead of being like, no, I love all of the black people. I love all of the black people of America.
Historically, black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said you can't do it with.
Like, I also personally think that this is like a little whiny. This is something that he did a lot after 2020 when he lost the election, where like there's a difference between being butthurt about like liberal elites, and then like using that real that real anger and resentment you have towards liberal elites, and then basically packaging that as like real anger and resentment that the white working class has towards liberal elites. He does a really good job with that, and he did a really good job with that in the 2016 election. He did a really good job with that in general. But when you constantly fucking whine about how you didn't actually lose the election, you come across like a whiny fucking loser. And he's doing that here. This isn't a good way to answer any of these questions. You just now look butthurt, okay? You look like you're complaining. You look like it's too narcissistic that even like those in the edges, maybe not like the diehard MAGA loyalists, like that one guy who's like clapping like a fucking seal in the audience, but like the average voter who's like maybe thinking about voting for Trump, maybe hasn't made up their minds even at this fucking point or whatever, like they're not going to look at this and go, oh yeah, no, that's my goat right there. It just, you look like a bitch, okay? You look like a little baby. You're like, you didn't even say hello to me. You didn't say hello to me at all. It's very fucked up. You lied to me. Kamala was supposed to be here, right? Like, it's just not great. Also, he did know Kamala Harris wasn't going to be there. Crazy Kamala disrespectfully refused to attend the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, but I'm on my way to meet with them now in Chicago, because of which they'll probably end up doing. She has no choice, but remember, it is only for that reason. He tried to hedge his bets and say, Kamala Harris will attend this because I'm attending it, if on the off chance that she does attend it. I mean, to be fair, Trump got cheated during the 2020 elections. What? They did cheat Trump during the elections? No, they didn't. What are you talking about? Oh, yes, hogs are back, baby. Hogs are back, baby. Oh, hell yeah. Hell yes, dude. I love you. Chatter, keep chirping, okay? Tell me everything you believe. I want to examine your beliefs really good, okay?
with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late, just so we understand. I have too much respect.
Also, the reason why he was half an hour late is because apparently, where is it? Where the fuck is the Huffington Post journalist who talked about it? Is it here somewhere? No, it's not. No, that's all my other shit. Where did I put it in the lineup? Oh, here. According to HuffPost, deputy editor of HuffPost, Philip Lewis, I'm told that Trump is demanding that the National Association of Black Journalists do not live fact check, and that's why the event hasn't started. We're in a standoff. It was an ad break, please. Oh, dude, what do you mean? I already ran the ad break. So that was part of the reason why. That was part of the reason why that he was late. But that's pretty awesome in general. Yeah, we're going to do the Kamala isn't black clip. Hold on. He's going to keep going.
They couldn't get their equipment working or something
Mr.
was
President,
wrong.
I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you
I have
believe that
answered
black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another 4
I have
years.
been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work, in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir,
of
I'm
that.
asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me if you.
It's like that's what it means. Like it means diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what it. She just defined it. I like that in my head canon, he's like, no, literally, I don't know what it means. Everyone keeps saying it. Like, I don't know what those were. In my head canon, I'm imagining Trump literally being like, I genuinely don't know what those words mean, and I'm kind of scared because everyone always talks about it. So please, can you help me out a little bit? Like, it would be so sick.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say, no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number...
Yo! Bruh. Like, blackness in the United States of America is literally historically associated with the one drop rule, okay? It's just defined by whether white supremacists consider you black or not, okay? You can't just like pull that ripcord. It's like saying Obama is white because he's half white. Absolutely zero people think that way, okay? Saying that to a room full of black journalists is insane. About a woman born in Oakland, too. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, that's not... It's also funny because simultaneously, the Republican Party is like, maybe Kamala Harris was not born in America, okay? Oh, Jesus Christ.
A number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
and
you believe that she is...
I think somebody should look into that too when you ask continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans have said?
I really don't know. Could be.
Also, like, what difference does it make? Even if she was obviously she's not an Indian woman, okay? If you're half black, you're black. That's just how it works, okay? In America, because, that's just the way white supremacists see you, and that is how society treats you. That's number one. Number two, even if she was just like straight up an Indian woman, that's still calling her a DEI hire in that circumstance would still be the same shit, which is awesome because in a weird way, this almost feels, chat, I'm out of jail. Congratulations to Horny Toad 420 for being released from jail. He's right though. Nope. Like, it just doesn't make any sense unless you mean DEI is just directly a substitute for the N-word. So it doesn't fit in his mind to Kamala Harris, who is Indian and not black, I guess. He's like, what do you mean? D just means the N-word. It doesn't make sense for Kamala, who's Indian. Is that what he's trying to say? I don't get it.
There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that
Well,
interview.
you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we were divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender.
Yeah, Gloria Harris over here is just like desperately clinging on to any fucking parachute. She is Donald Trump's parachute in this situation. She is trying her very best. She's the Fox News anchor, by the way. And does she like him? Yes. She's a Fox News anchor. Or not Gloria Harris, Harris Faulkner. Is that her name? Harris Faulkner. What is this line? Like, what black person will be convinced on this argument? Is why I hate when people say you are white. I grew up around real racists and none of them would have considered you white. I mean, it doesn't matter. I think plenty of racists, if they didn't know my background, would most likely say I'm white. Harris Faulkner, my bad. So that's the reason. Like I have as a white passing individual, I have a shit ton of privilege. Okay, until they find out my name or my background or anything like that, you know, that's why I say I'm white.
And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be.
Okay, we watched the rest of this. And then he just like tries to tie back like anti-immigrant sentiment directly to anti-immigration sentiment directly to fucking, you know, black people being harmed by immigrants, which, I mean, I think that sentiment is captivating for a lot of people because there's no counter narrative to it, which is why I always find it to be a very dangerous one that the Democrats do not actually have any sort of counter to, even though they should have had for years. Right. But I guess luckily for the Democratic Party, the black jobs thing became a meme almost instantaneously coming from Donald Trump. And everybody started making jokes about it. But overall, this should really tank his numbers with black voters who for some reason can't see the light. I mean, one Fox host is grilling him and he can't focus on black people for 1 second. Yeah. So there's also an update on, according to the New York Times, the Iranian supreme leader has issued a direct strike against Israel. We're going to be getting to that in a little bit after, obviously, Hamas's Politburo chief, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated. World War III, potentially. I don't know. This is entirely in the hands of the American government, for the record. They let Israel fucking go nutty mode in the region and just like kind of got too focused on their own shit. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated on that. Okay. But overall, not good, not great at all. Not a great situation. This happened last night. I will get to it in a little bit, but Black Journals Group president reacts to Trump visit controversy. Wait, is this like
The
before?
administration has seen an even lower number of unemployed.
What? Usha Vance got suspended on Twitter? Who's that? Oh, Usha Vance is Vance's wife, JD Vance's wife. Okay. But Let's continue with this for now.
For
Let's
Black
finish this
Americans.
off, and
so
then
there will
we'll
be
get
a lot
to
of
it.
fact-checking that is expected on the stage live as it happens. It will be published on NABJ's website and elsewhere. I do want to let you know there will also be a protest that is planned here. We're not sure how large, but there is going to be a protest outside of the hotel where Donald Trump will be speaking to journalists.
And joining us now is CNN political commentator Jamal Simmons. He was Vice President Harris's communications director. Hi, Jamal. Thanks for coming on. So Trump is wavering on whether he'll debate Harris. He previously said he was willing to debate Joe Biden anytime, any place, anywhere. What has changed?
Well, what's changed is I think Trump thought after the Supreme Court rulings on immunization and or immunity rather, and then the Eileen Cannon's rulings on the cases down in Florida, that maybe he was going to avoid having to go back in front of another judge or prosecutor. But if he sits on a debate stage with Kamala Harris, that's really facing a prosecutor for 90 minutes on the biggest stage America is going to have, this big courtroom of a debate. And so I don't know that he really wants to do that. If I'm his campaign, I'm thinking twice about it. The problem is he gets called the chicken, basically. And I think that's what he's trying to avoid.
So Harris, for her part, drew in a huge diverse crowd in Atlanta last night. There is new polling out consistently showing Harris outperforming Biden with black voters. But our CNN's Ryan Young spoke with some black male voters who said they didn't feel like she is speaking directly to them. What more does she need to do, you think?
You know, before she got picked, she had been spending time traveling around the country doing an economic tour, particularly thinking about African-American men and how to talk to African-American men about their financial future. So when I think about her economic policy, what she's been talking about is wealth and wages, right? How do we get people more wealth, start more businesses, community development, financial institutions, these CDFIs that are kind of an arcane language. But really, how do we get people more wealth? And how do we make sure they get more wages? We've seen wages grow over the course of the Biden-Harris administration. She's also talked about health care and child care, because one of the things for families today that matters is that if you're sick, if your parents are sick, your kids are sick, it's hard for you to work. You can't get that extra shift. Also, if you don't have child care, you can't afford child care. If you're trying to start a company, if you're trying to get an extra shift at work, if you can't figure out how to get your kids taken care of after 3 o'clock, that is a direct impact on how much money you can make. So I think her talking directly about these issues to voters is really going to matter as she goes across these states.
I also want to ask you about this.
Wait, they pulled Trump off stage? That's what happened?
2025.
I think we have to leave it there by the Trump team.
All right.
So leave it. That is the last word. Thank you so much.
Oh, they pulled him. I thought it was weird because I thought, oh, there's one last question about Project 2025. And then he was like, no, we're leaving. I didn't realize that it was his team that pulled him. Oh, dude, that's really fucking.
Mr. Trump, for coming today and joining us.
Well, thank you for your job.
Oh, dude, that's not good. Again, that's another fucking misstep overall. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking, honestly. Like, there is no reason to attend this. You could have just straight up said, I'm not attending it because Kamala's not attending it. In his mind, he did great. I mean, this like plays well for all the fucking weird, sweaty, gross, racist losers where he's like, look at Trump owning black women in broad daylight on a public stage. My goat is back. My king is back. But this like doesn't look that great to moderates in general. I don't think it looks great to the black men that he was trying to win the votes of and win favor with, you know? No, it's to say he did it and he supports black people more than anyone. Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm saying that like the reason why he wanted to do this is specifically because he thought that he could navigate through this conversation in a way where he kind of didn't look like a fucking asshole. Okay? The problem is there's no spin here. You know what I mean? Now it just looks like he's at odds. According to Aiden Ross, the topics for his stream are pre-approved. Dana White, Russia, crypto. What the fuck? That's awesome. He's shifting from disenfranchised extremes to center, but he can't pivot. Yeah, I mean, he's stuck in the middle here. He's stuck in the middle of like his own, his background, what he's done so far in terms of his like commentary, in terms of like how he has presented himself. He's stuck in this place where he's like trying to moderate, but he's not having a good time doing so. But also the trying to moderate angle he was doing against Joe Biden. Maybe there's another instinct there now that he's going up against a black woman, right? maybe the instinct there is, oh, I just hit like max racism here, thinking that will be good. It might play well to the base, but it's not going to play well to moderates. It's not going to play well to independents, because the biggest problem with the Republican Party, and I say this pretty much every single fucking day, I repeat it every single fucking day, is that they're so high off their own farts that they think every American thinks like them. Okay? They think every American is just as racist. They think every American is just as sexist. Now, while, yes, a lot of Americans are racist, yes, a lot of Americans are sexist, the level, the degree of like overt sexism and racism has to be managed. This is why Republicans used to at least do something known as dog whistles, right? A will he, won't he type situation, where at least there's a little bit of plausible deniability for you, an out, so that you can shift the conversation back to your opponent being hysterical. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has consistently leaned into that horrible instinct overall that is unimaginably toxic to, and this is demonstrable by polling, this is demonstrable by the outcome of the 2020 election. It's genuinely toxic to broader subsects of the society, where they just go, that's a little fucking wild for me, man. I don't know about all this. This is at the heart. This is at the heart of the entire conversation surrounding Republicans right now, and the way that they're having a really hard time responding to the Republicans are weird narrative, right? When Democrats say Republicans are weird, okay? When Democrats say that, Republicans double down on the weird shit, where they're like, look at all the trans people I have in my phone. That's a weird fucking thing. Why do you have so many videos of trans people on your phone, dog? What the fuck's wrong with you? I don't want to see that. What's wrong with you? I don't want to be around you. You're gross. You're so sweaty. Okay? And that is the heart of the problem here, okay? This is a more holistic issue. This is a more holistic problem than one Trump could solve, and that's why they're stuck in the middle here, where they're basically trying to navigate this treacherous sea, okay? Where they want to look moderate, but they can't get themselves to fucking look moderate at all, because all they've done thus far is one thing and one thing only. Republicans have blinded themselves into thinking that everyone else is secretly in agreement with them, but they're just too pussy to say it because of woke, okay? Because they'll get canceled. Do you understand? And they just cannot comprehend a world where, like, no, the average American might actually align with you on some of the fucking... The average American might think trans people are weird or gross or whatever, but they don't think about it as much as you do. And when you are constantly talking about it, then they fucking also feel like you're weird and gross. You're weirder and grosser. Do you understand? This is another great example of this. Obviously, I retweeted this, but like, this is the perfect example of this, okay? Conservatives, I'm weird. How about I show you 2,500 anti-trans memes I saved on my phone? Still think I'm weird? Dude, look, this is it.
I'm curious kind of how you're thinking, you know, when you think about the way that you put out content and the way that you think about growing your media empire.
Here, this is a blowjob.
It's so beautiful seeing one of the narratives that I have championed for fucking years become the legitimate, like, mainstream talking point finally. Like, out of everything else, I know I say 2024, year of Hasanabi vindication, but this right here is something that I have talked about for fucking years, okay? For years. I even covered this interview, and if you go back and watch my coverage of this interview, you will see exactly the same things that I'm saying about how, like, insanely brain broken Republicans are, and when they are met with, like, a normal human being in broad daylight, okay? Even a liberal journalist such as Taylor Lorenz, friend of the show, like, she is presenting herself in a much better way, than the obsessive psychopathic behavior that Chaya Raichik is demonstrating. It's just like, why do you have a fucking photo of a blowjob on your phone? Like, what are you doing?
Empire.
Here, this is a blowjob.
What? I don't know what.
Certain lib communities even made fun of you for saying this stuff was not fact-based when it's the correct response the whole time. I know. You're referencing Destiny and you're referencing Vosh. They are also unimaginably brain broken and they are also permanently online. That is why whenever these guys would come, whenever like right-wing Republicans would try to be like super transphobic, I would neutralize that argument about being like, why the fuck do you care about this? You're so gross. Like you're behaving in a very weird way, not recognizing that that was the appropriate measure to take in that situation. But that's also specifically because those guys are fucking weird. They're weird. They're also weird. They're fucking permanently online. They debate the ethics of age of consent laws and debate like lolly porn and the ethics of child pornography. That's weird as fuck, dog. That's weird. That's my point. That's why I always reiterate my commitment to be normal. Be fucking normal. Now, obviously, because in many respects, especially Destiny gets his fucking lines from the Democratic Party, I'm sure he now says it's good to show how weird these guys are. Okay? I'm sure he has changed his mind now. Just like prior to the swap out of Kamala Harris, he was riding with Biden pretty fucking aggressively because he gets his notes and just reiterates whatever fucking MSNBC is saying, but like in an edgy way. Okay, that's his angle. Anyway, so this is why I always try to get people to understand like being normal goes a long way. It plays a big fucking role in showcasing. I assumed he wanted Biden to drop out. No, man. No, I'm not talking about V. I'm talking about Destiny. He apparently went on a fucking Jubilee, like literally the day of the announcement, a Jubilee video came out where he was like defending Biden, riding with Biden. Anyway, so this is not about him anyway. It doesn't matter. Let's get to what's going on in Israel, because obviously the situation is developing and it will have obvious global consequences. But beyond the global consequences, if you only care about like American domestic politics, this is going to be very important for American domestic politics as well. Because last night, Israel, even though they didn't officially technically take credit for it, Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh, for those of you who don't know, is the Politburo chief of Hamas. He is not the military commander. Okay. He is not a part of the Hamas military wing at all. He is the politics chief, the political bureau chief. Okay. As in the main guy who was a part of the negotiations process, the guy who was free to travel from Qatar to Turkey to also Tehran. He was in Tehran for the inauguration of the new Iranian president. The new Iranian president, which, by the way, ran on a reform line as well, or significantly more reformist than prior leadership. And he was there in the midst of the ceasefire talks that he has been engaging in. He was in Tehran. He got assassinated alongside his bodyguard. 15 minutes after you logged off, your luck streaks continues. Yeah, I know. Of course, I was not live when that happened because when I go offline, the world collapses all the time. So, that's normal. Now, prior to that, he's the leader of Hamas, the one who was cheering October 7th. No, he was not the one cheering October 7th. That's the Lebanese, that's the dude in Lebanon. The one that you're thinking of is the one that Zionists routinely point to, that say that because of what Israel has done to us, the Palestinian people, they deserve 1 million October 7s, which, by the way, is enough to say genocidal intent for Hamas, but Israel's unimaginable cruelty and unimaginably violent genocidal rhetoric, not enough to say if they're genocidal. So, but that's not the same person. You're thinking of a different person, regardless. So Ismail Haniyeh is not a part of the military wing. He is, you're thinking of potentially Yahya Sinwar, the person who is responsible for the military wing. Ismail Haniyeh, on the other hand, is the one in Qatar. He was in Qatar. He had freedom of travel. I believe he might have even gone to China to facilitate that Palestinian front deal that China put together. He is functionally the mouthpiece. Is he like a prime minister? He was elected for a brief moment, obviously, on the Hamas ticket, but regardless, he is, the way that you need to understand it is like he is basically like a diplomat, and his job and his responsibility in this circumstance is the facilitation of the ceasefire negotiations. Okay. Now, the Israeli occupying force had already killed his family, like slaughtered his family completely. Children, grandchildren. I think it was either his like sister's whole family too. Like his extended family was all wiped out already. Okay. Which is, of course, that's expected. I mean, come on. They're in Gaza. Of course, they're going to get fucking killed. So that was already expected barbaric behavior from Israel, regardless. But functionally, his role is to be the negotiator. And if Israel is in the midst of hostage negotiations with a ceasefire agreement that the American government put together, okay, that the American government basically reiterated their commitment to over and over again for the past couple of months, while simultaneously claiming Hamas is the one breaking these agreements. Hamas is the one actually gumming up the works, okay? And then Israel demonstrably was the one actually saying, fuck no, okay? Fuck no to the deal that was supposedly Israel's own deal, okay? Today's New York Times, the daily episode, spouted that Hamas is the reason we don't have a ceasefire line, and it broke me. I thought we moved past that. No, we have not moved past that, because we will never move past that. That is a State Department line. They have to reiterate their commitment to Israel. If they fucking say Israel is fucking up the bag, obviously people are going to be like, whoa, what the fuck? Why are we still aiding and abetting Israel's genocidal actions, especially when it's deeply unpopular? By the way, as I understand, Haniyeh wasn't in Beijing. That was Abu Marzouk and Azam al-Ahmad. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if he was in Beijing or not. But regardless, by the way, Hezbollah had not confirmed whether or not Fuad Shakur, the Hezbollah top military commander, had been killed until 2 hours ago. They finally confirmed it in the strike in Beirut that occurred yesterday. Israel's been going after top generals and top administration leaders, including obviously militant, like leaders involved in militancy within the resistance groups against Israel and America in the region. There was another person that they killed as well earlier today, but assassinating Ismail Haniyeh is a entirely different equation. And I think people don't fully comprehend it, especially because most people don't know how this works. Most people don't understand what Ismail Haniyeh's job was. And most people are unfortunately deluded on this issue because mainstream media just puts a boatload of false information under the auspices of like impartial coverage. Unless you've been following this stuff closely, watching my broadcast, you're going to be a little bit confused about what is going on. But the top leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated in Tehran last night in a precise airstrike that killed him and his bodyguard. Okay. And it's really fucked up for two reasons. One, Ismail Haniyeh is the, chief negotiator in the hostage negotiations deal in the midst of this like ceasefire demand that the United States government is making, right? That's number one. Why the fuck would you kill the main negotiator out of nowhere? He's a civilian. He's not associated with the military wing regardless. That's number one. Number two, this happened on Iranian soil in the capital. Okay. So it's another major escalation from Israel. Now, Israel has killed Iranian nuclear scientists on Iranian soil on a regular basis. But this is akin to like killing a top foreign diplomat in the midst of negotiations on Iranian soil, which is obviously a little bit different than just like murking nuclear scientists with assassinations. They do on a regular basis, right? Like I said, Omega Law civilian. What do you mean? I mean, he is a diplomat. That's why he is the person responsible for the negotiations. You can't say Omega Law civilian. Like it's It's like assassinating a fucking ambassador or a head of state. Yeah, it would be like smoking Blinken.
Hamas leader overnight that could have major repercussions for the war in Gaza. Ismail Haniyeh, a political leader who is one of the chief negotiators in the ceasefire talks, was killed in Iran just after attending the inauguration of the country's new leader. This comes on the heels of another major assassination of a top Hezbollah leader in Lebanon. Imtiaz Tayyib is in Beirut. Imtiaz, good morning.
Good morning. Well, it really does feel like the Middle East is on the brink of a major escalation following what appears to be 2 assassinations carried out by Israel in a matter of hours, including here in Beirut. Now, one of the men killed, Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas's political chief, has been a key negotiator for a ceasefire and hostage release deal with Israel. But any potential agreement is now in major jeopardy.
Chaos in the immediate aftermath of the Israeli airstrike in the southern Beirut neighborhood of Dahya. When we arrived shortly afterwards, hundreds had gathered after learning 4 people, including 2 children, were killed and at least 70 wounded in the attack.
Well, you might be able to see over my shoulder that building over there that was damaged in that Israeli strike. And as you can imagine, it's a scene of real chaos here, but also one of real anger.
In a move almost unheard of, the Israeli military claimed responsibility for the strike and named its target.
Fuad Shukur, also known as Said Muhsin, Hezbollah's most senior military commander and the head of its strategic unit.
Israel says Shukur was responsible for a rocket attack on a soccer field over the weekend that killed 12 young people in the Golan Heights. But before Hezbollah could even respond to his apparent killing, Iranian state TV announced another major assassination. Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas's political wing. While Iran blamed Israel for the killing, Israel has remained silent. But it's triggered panic in the Iranian capital, with the Revolutionary Guard ordering an immediate overhaul of the nation's internal security. The assassination has other major implications too. Haniyeh was leading ceasefire and hostage release negotiations for Hamas and was widely seen as more moderate and pragmatic than Hamas's military leaders who, after nearly 10 months of brutal warfare, continued to battle Israeli forces in Gaza. The fear now is those talks.
Obviously, he's the military faction leader. So Yahya Sinwar is seen as like a significantly less moderate figure in terms of the Palestinian resistance than Ismail Haniyeh is. After all, he's the one who's literally negotiating the fucking ceasefire deals. So assassinating the fucking moderate guy who's talking to you about the ceasefire negotiations is the most insane thing you can do if you want to do the ceasefire deal to begin with and release the hostages to begin with. But they don't want that. Israel has never wanted that, especially Benjamin Netanyahu does not want that. Okay? Are you sad Hamas leader is dead? Brick dumb chaser. I'm sad that the Israeli hostages are not returning home. I'm sad that the Palestinian hostages are not returning home. I'm sad that there is no ceasefire in sight. I'm sad that our brutal, violent, barbaric attack dog in the Middle East is completely unleashed and doing whatever the fuck they want to do and escalating tensions with the hopes that daddy, the United States of America, American soldiers, American military men and women will go and defend Israel when they do this kind of shit and get retaliation. Okay? If you don't comprehend this, if you cannot comprehend this, I don't know what to tell you. Now, the IDF didn't technically claim responsibility, even though they did. They did the same thing because they can't fucking help themselves. They're fascists, right? What do we know about fascists? Fascists can never help themselves. They have to fucking flex. So what did the IDF do? On their fucking Facebook account, they posted a photo immediately after the assassination of, they posted a photo of Ismail Haniyeh with the words, target eliminated. Then they deleted it. But of course, everybody fucking saw it. The actual military leader of Hamas, Al-Qassam Brigade's Mohammed Daif, was already reportedly killed by the IDF a few weeks ago in Han Yunis. Anyway, for chatter still being dumb, Ismail Haniyeh held no military rank. He was not even weapons trained. He was the head of the diplomatic arm of the party. I'm sorry, more than 2 moving pieces confuses some barks at noises chatters, but y'all need to catch up or keep your tongues behind your teeth. U.S. officials already claimed it was Israel anyway. Of course, everybody fucking knows it's Israel. What are we talking about?
And this morning, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said all-out war in the region is
Mohammed Deif, as far as I understand, is still not is not confirmed.
still not inevitable. But following Israel's attack in Beirut and the assassination in Tehran, that may be wishful thinking, as Hezbollah, Hamas, and now crucially Iran will no doubt respond.
Yeah, you are 100% going. USS Wasp with 2,500 Marines are deployed outside Lebanon right now is just starting. US will need to send 100K plus. Now, why the fuck are we in this suicide pact when the obvious when the obvious situation here is reining in the fucking attack dog by telling him no more weapons? That's it. Okay? That's all you need to do. Like, you just have to say, if you're America in this circumstance, all you have to do is say, hey, you don't want to do this fucking ceasefire that we presented, that we keep repping, that we keep actually fucking pointing to as a good deal, that people are finally asking, demanding in the Western world even. Okay, no more weapons. That's it. It ends tomorrow. It ends yesterday. Okay? It could have ended on October 8th if America wanted it to end on October 8th. Okay? That's the reality. Iran is going to send another volley of missiles and give America and Israel a 48-hour notice. Anything short of Israel assassinating the Ayatollah on live TV will not have consequences for the state of Israel in the short term. They have passed every single red line. I don't think Iran is interested in doing anything major that puts the existence of the state of Iran as it currently exists at risk. Yeah. Iran said that they will respond, that they will retaliate, but everything that they've done thus far, whether it was after Qasem Soleimani's assassination, which was also illegal and fucking insane, or whether it be after Israel bombed the consulate, it has always been incredibly restrained. Incredibly restrained. So restrained that even Western media has considered it to be restrained. Think about that. Okay? They have no business ever giving Iran any kind of fucking positive coverage whatsoever. Okay? Now, the other side of this story is that Israel only responds to violence, as in Israel only responds positively to violence, positively by their enemies, right? Like, Israel only backs down when they actually see some kind of significant harm to their population. They respond with extra violence when it's obviously an enemy that they consider to be a weak enemy that they can punish by fucking destroying every matter of civil life in the Gaza Strip, okay? But they backed away from further escalations when Iran sent in a fuck ton of drones, including showcasing that they are capable of striking inside of Israel, military bases and whatnot, okay? Hezbollah did a similar move when they showed drone footage, okay? Israel also had to back away from their invasion of Lebanon when Hezbollah pushed them out. This is a terrifying lesson to teach the entire resistance group in the region, okay? Like, you're basically telling everybody, we'll fucking murder your children if we find you to be a weak foe. But if you actually show us that there will be consequences for our actions, then we'll back away. That's what they're teaching everybody. They're like, no diplomacy with us. We're rabid. You cannot negotiate with us. We will do everything in our power to keep fucking killing you, especially if we perceive you to be weak. And now they've destroyed the fucking ceasefire talks entirely. Here is what Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had to say about the Haniyeh operation that Israel conducted. I think we should look at Lebanon as a far more serious situation. Hezbollah may now use its precision missiles on Israel after its top military leader was assassinated in broad daylight in the middle of Beirut. And Beirut was always the red line for Hezbollah. Civilians were also killed in the strike. The real possibility of war is with Lebanon, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, I think that is a very real consideration. But also Iran's retaliation now. Iran says that they might retaliate, or they've okayed a retaliation. So obviously that's three fronts all of a sudden. You have Gaza, you have Hezbollah in the north, and you have Iran everywhere. You then also have the Yemen retaliation that is very much real as well. Yemen literally bombed a fucking Israeli neighborhood with a fucking drone, with like a bathtub drone. That was insane. That's like previously unheard of shit, okay? Where the fuck is your air defenses?
Haniyeh was involved in ceasefire talks in Gaza. What impact is his death going to have?
Well, of course, I've seen the reports, and what I can tell you is this. First, this is something we were not aware of or involved.
Great, man. Thank you. Once again, reiterating that, like, I was asleep on the wheel. Israel is dog walking us. They do whatever the fuck they want. Like, even if it's not true, right? Even if it's literally not true, because fucking Benjamin Netanyahu was in America like last week. What are we talking about, right? Like, they had no conversations about what the next steps are. Okay. They didn't even fucking bring up the top of the hour ad break coming at the top of the hour when there's a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. They didn't bring that up for $5, $6 or free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. You get one free subscription a month that you can use on whichever broadcaster you choose to use it on. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. I know I'm vile. So even if it is not true, and they were absolutely aware of this, which I think they must have some inclination that it was going to happen. Okay. Why the fuck are you saying that Israel gets to do whatever the fuck it wants? You're just showing weakness again. The plan being considered by using missiles and drones, but this time Germany just asked citizens to leave Lebanon while it's still possible. I think England said similar things as well. A lot of the Western nations are trying to fucking evacuate their citizens out of Lebanon as quickly as possible because the region is now gearing up for fucking war. Great stuff overall. Anyone at this point that still tries to maintain the position that, like, Israel is always looking for a partner in peace but can't find it is the most delusional person on the planet. Now, do I fault them for being this delusional? No, because every aspect of the media is covering it as though it's Hamas that's like fucking up the bag, fucking up the deal over and over again. Okay? But it has always been Israel, and it will continue to be Israel. And if you can't see it, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're in the midst of a hostage negotiation. America wants you to do the hostage negotiation. The entirety of the Western world wants you to do the hostage negotiation. International organs of justice have declared you to be a fucking war criminal, your leadership. The International Criminal Justice Court has declared Israel to be an apartheid. Everyone is basically saying exactly what's going on, and Americans are just going, la, 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 can't hear you, can't hear you. They had a fucking pro-rape protest like this 2 days ago. That's what Israel's worried about. How much rape can their fucking soldiers do on Palestinians that they've detained? That's their top priority right now. The fact that we are going in 10 toes down on this like genocidal apartheid regime in this like weird suicide pact is insane.
It's very hard to speculate, and I've learned over many years never to speculate on the impact one event may have on something else. So I can't tell you what this means.
That sounds fake. Yeah, of course it sounds fake because it's like unimaginably cruel. It's insanely cruel. It sounds utterly psychotic. Except if you watch my last video on it, Israel just had its own January 6th moment. Let's get to this. You will see where I talked about it. Okay, this 60-minute video will go through all of the details of why the Knesset held an emergency meeting where Benjamin Netanyahu's own Likud party Knesset member actively said, yes, shoving a metal rod in the ass of a detained Palestinian in the Sdei Teiman facility, which was covered for months at this point by even Western media, for having like horrific acts of rape be conducted. A concentration camp that is not actually for Hamas militants, but simply people suspected of being Hamas militants. A concentration camp where they release 40% of the detained Palestinians in a matter of weeks after raping and torturing them, by the way. That concentration camp had 9 of the jailers get arrested by the Israeli government. What did the Israeli public do? They went to the fucking prison and the military courts and tried to personally release the fucking 9 detained soldiers. Now, why did Israel try to actually do some justice here in this one specific instance? It's because they are under investigation by international organs of justice, and they want to avoid getting penalized for it and actually getting punished for it. They want to use complementarity as They want to use the principle of complementarity, the idea that there's due process inside of Israel for war crimes, therefore no international organ of justice can interfere in their affairs, as a mechanism, as a shield. That's why they wanted to fucking do it. That's why they arrested the 9 people. They detained them. Okay? They were released some of them were released, by the way. Iranian media reporting that an Iranian military advisor was killed in Beirut also. Milad Bedi, one of Iran's military advisors in Lebanon, was martyred in last night's attack by Zionist regime fighters in Tahrir. He was settled in the vicinity of Hajj Mohsen Shakar building, and his body was identified a few hours ago. Okay? Something that you have to remember, something that you have to consider is that the people that were protesting were not protesting because of the rapes that were occurring in the Sde Tayman concentration camp. They were protesting because they were pro-rape. Okay? That's who we have a suicide pact with. That's the country that we have a suicide pact with right now. That's the country that we're letting ride. That's the country that we're riding in the battle for. Absolutely unimaginable. So fucking insane. Anyway, here's Truda Parsi of the Quincy Institute shedding some light on the actions that Israel took earlier on CNN this morning.
Vice President of the Quincy Institute, an American think tank specializing in U.S. foreign policy. His analysis on exactly how seismic the events of the last 24 hours are for the U.S. role in this region, giving 4 specific points. In his words, 1, it kills the ceasefire talks. 2, it may kill renewed U.S.-Iran diplomacy.
Yeah, this was a older post from Vincent Bevins. In the final years of the South African apartheid, the white government decided it must, 1, overthrow the government of Angola, 2, install a puppet regime in Namibia, 3, attack Zimbabwe, 4, attack Botswana, 5, attack Zambia in order to survive. This did not work, okay? They are going through the exact steps that every fucking prior white supremacist fascist government has gone through. It is a damn near identical circumstance to Nazi Germany. It is a damn near identical circumstance to apartheid South Africa. Okay? And Israel has been given a wonderful exit ramp from the resilient Palestinian people to have a South African apartheid ending, which it refuses to do so. And it seems like it will have a Nazi Germany ending instead. Okay? Only difference in this dynamic is that America is unconditionally riding with Israel. Haniyeh has been through many attempts on his life, most notably the failed 2003 bombing of the Hamas leadership conclave in the Ramal. But what's the value in this? They did it with Salah Shahadeh, Ahmed Yassin, Al-Rantisi, all unbelievably important figures, all replaced. Every round in Gaza, there's an article that reads with the euphoria. These are the names of the Hamas officials the IDF killed. And people forget because God forbid we acknowledge there's something systemic here. Exactly. Do you think that the Palestinian people are going to all of a sudden turn around and be like, oh, you assassinated the guy that was conducting the ceasefire negotiation? Oh, well, I guess I no longer feel some type of way about you murdering my entire family, you destroying all the water wells, you doing a military operation, you doing genocide to my people. I guess that's okay now. No, he's just going to be replaced. Of course, because this is not a political strategy, okay? This is a group of individuals that have only known violence their entire lives by this criminal Zionist entity that have no other way out. It's a push comes to shove situation. Anyway.
3, it may get Prime Minister Netanyahu the war that he has been looking for. 4, it corners Kamala Harris. I'm going to bring you back in shortly, Alex, because I know that you'll want to make some comments on these. Trita, thank you for joining me and Alex this hour. Just explain a little further where you believe and what you mean by this analysis in terms of Netanyahu and his political calculations at this point.
Thank you for having me. Well, I think, first of all, we have to recognize that Netanyahu in particular has been pushing for a war between the United States and Iran for more than 15 years. He's done so using the nuclear program. On a couple of occasions, he was actually quite close. The strategy has been to start the war himself and then drag the U.S. into it. this may have been one of his best chances yet to do so. So it is completely in line with everything else that he's done for the last 15 or so years. Moreover, we know very well that Netanyahu has been the main obstacle for a ceasefire deal. In the Israeli media, it's openly discussed how he actually has been leaking intelligence in order to sabotage the talks. He's being accused by the family members of the hostages, by his own officials, by military officials of being the obstacle. And he's done so for a very simple reason. The minute this war ends, his political career ends and his prison sentence likely will begin, given the corruption charges against him. So prolonging the war has always been a case. Undermining the ceasefire negotiations has been the case. And what is more effective in killing the ceasefire talks than actually killing the person on the other side of the negotiating table? And then you have the Kamala Harris aspect of this. Kamala Harris's body language, her tone, the rhetoric clearly indicated that there will be some form of a shift. How substantive it will be, we don't know, but some form of a shift away from what Biden's approach to Netanyahu, which has been quite differential. But by escalating matters in this way that he has now done, potentially even getting a regional war, he will essentially force Kamala Harris into the same bear hug as Biden voluntarily adopted after October 7th, and will take the initiative away from Kamala Harris in case she becomes president, rather than and forcing her to react to events rather than actually being able to take initiatives of her own.
Alex, you were in Washington.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, this is really fucking bad. Okay, this will, if there is an escalation and the United States is brought in to a regional conflict in a much more meaningful capacity in terms of like American soldiers, okay? That's precisely what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. Giving him what he wants is not only devastating for the globe, devastating for oil prices in general, devastating for the global economy in general, but it's over at that point. It's fucking game over. Like, there was, from a domestic politics standpoint, okay, from a simple American election cycle standpoint, this right here, from just simply the conversation, if we're going to look at it in the narrowest way possible, looking at it as like Biden versus Donald Trump, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, if this leads to the Biden administration going to war on behalf of Israel, it's the most jover it has ever been for Kamala Harris. Okay, it's the most jover for not only just like Israel, it's the most jover for America. It's just miserable.
It seems like ages ago that Netanyahu was there. It's not. It's what, 72, 90 hours ago. It was always going to be a controversial visit. What did he...
Another two points that I've reiterated this election cycle from the start is, one, this is the most boring election cycle so far, but it has the capacity to become the most interesting one. We're already there. It has become the most interesting election cycle so far. The other thing that I keep reiterating is an age-old adage from American elections in general. Foreign policy is never the top of mind until it becomes the only thing that people think about. Okay? Foreign policy is never top of mind for Americans until it is the only thing for Americans. Okay? Vietnam is an example of this. Israel could make this the exact equation.
He achieve? And what did he leave with, if anything?
Well, I think he achieved things mainly on the domestic front. He managed to come over here and show his domestic audience back home that he has the support of the United States, not just from Republicans, many of whom were on their feet clapping, giving standing ovations, alongside a number of Democrats, we should say, when he gave his speech to Congress last Wednesday. He had these meetings at the White House. He showed that he is very much welcomed in Washington. So it was mainly sort of for domestic benefit was the sense. But I would say that he left on less good terms because following his meeting with Kamala Harris, she came out and gave arguably the most forceful speech that we've heard about Gaza from the Biden administration. Yes, talking about the U.S.'s ironclad support for Israel, but then talking in very emotive terms about the suffering that we're seeing in Gaza. And she said, I will not be silent. A couple hours later, we heard from an anonymous Israeli.
Haniyeh was a terrorist. We should be happy he's gone. If Putin got killed, nobody would be sad. Dude, what are you talking about? Haniyeh is not the equivalent of Putin in this situation. He's not even the equivalent to Zelensky in this situation. He's the guy who is negotiating the ceasefire. What the fuck are you talking about? Putin is comparable to Netanyahu in this equation, no matter how hard liberals and Republicans try not to see that reality. The equivalence here is Putin being Netanyahu, not Ismail Haniyeh.
Israeli official who talked about how those comments were problematic and could cause problems for the ceasefire deal. So he left under less positive terms than he arrived in. I will just note one more thing, Becky. We've heard for weeks, you and I have talked endlessly about the ceasefire deal and U.S. officials putting the onus on Hamas, saying the ball is in Hamas's court. They have stopped saying that. In fact, it appears that the ball has switched into Israel's court.
It was always in Israel's court. It's just media always likes to play fucking catch up. Media loves playing catch up every day. Like months later, they're like, oh, well, I guess this Sdei Taimon concentration camp is kind of fucked up. 6 months after the original investigative reporting that comes from Israeli investigative reporters. For the past 3 months, we've said that Hamas is actually ruining the fucking peace deals, but and the ceasefire, but maybe it was actually Israel. The ball's on Israel's court. And it's like, yeah, if you're deluded and if you're just like abiding by the State Department line, then yeah, if you're reiterating what Anthony Blinken is saying all the time, then yeah, you're just lying to your fucking audience. You're shocked about this change of attitude.
U.S. officials did expect Netanyahu to move forward on that ceasefire deal last week. And I'm just struck by this image that the Mossad director, David Barnea, was at the table on Sunday negotiating for this ceasefire with CIA Director Bill Burns and others, while also, if this is indeed true, potentially planning the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. Becky?
No, that's a
How the fuck do you negotiate with a terrorist? Talk about how the IDF bombed the hospital again. Oh, October 7 levers coming back. Coming back. October 7 levers coming back, dude. Look, last time he was in here, let me pop in and hear the absolute quote from Hassan. Kamala is as garbage as Biden. The copium is fucking crazy. Hassan is the king of copium on June 27th. Perhaps that should have actually given you your first inclination that I know what the fuck I'm talking about in terms of American domestic policy and foreign policy, and you don't. But no, okay? No. He just still operating. He is still operating on this fucking weirdo attitude. You literally know nothing, you dumbass. Well, I know how to spell no, which I guess you don't. If at this point you still are running with this narrative that like IDF doesn't bomb hospitals, you are living on a different planet, okay? It's not even a position that like the American government is pushing. Like there's no one. Israel's not even pushing that position. They're like celebrating how hard they fucking siege hospitals. But thank you. I think any country would have a hard time negotiating with a group that cries for the death of all Jews. Yeah, you're right, man. That's definitely what's going on in your little hug box that you've cultivated this attitude in. Let me explain something to you, okay? I would be a little bit more humble if I got owned this fucking hard for repeating my favorite political commentators' talking points in another political commentator's chat without ever like re-examining them at all. If I was this far off base and the community that I was coming into, that I'm chirping at, was so on the money, I would probably have a little bit of re-examination. This should be your wake-up call, right? But instead, you're still operating on this fucking weird boundary. You're still operating on this idea that like, yeah, no, Hamas are actually like Jew haters and whatnot, and it's not a resistance to an apartheid regime that the entire fucking world sees, okay? I don't know how you refuse to acknowledge that. This guy gave you money for 18 months just to cry. Yeah, a lot of this happens quite frequently. People's brains break over like one issue, and then they just become like ride or die haters. They look for an alternative viewpoint that like that basically brings them in. an alternative viewpoint that brings them back, or an alternative viewpoint that basically confirms their biases. So then they just like get really invested in another person. I'm urging you, to be fair, I think it's all bad. No, don't fucking do this like cowardly. Well, I guess both sides are bad shit. Okay. No, you're just like trying to retriangulate your position here in this circumstance because like, obviously you came in here with the fucking smoke. You were like, talk about how the IDF bombed the hospital again, thinking that that was going to be a good line when Israel has blown up every fucking hospital in Gaza. What the fuck are we talking about? Okay. You have to recognize at a certain point that like you're on the wrong side of every single fucking issue. And that's probably not your own fault. It's because you just keep fucking reiterating and regurgitating talking points that you got from someone else without actually thinking about it on your own, without seeking within yourself what you truly believe. Does this actually correspond to my moral compass? Okay. It's just weird to do it when you're so obviously in the wrong. You see what I'm saying? They're on the last talking point for the streamer who has suddenly stopped talking about Israel-Palestine issue now that the rape torture facilities have been exposed. Yeah. Like Israel 2 days ago was having a pro-rape protest. They had a January 6th for pro-rape. And you're over here being like, oh, actually, these guys are still operating on death to all Jews. Like, no, that's not the reason, man. The fuck are we talking about? There were a lot of people who were not aware of how Israel operates in general on October 8th. They were shocked with the unimaginable amount of violence they saw from October 7th. Okay? They could not comprehend it. They were like, this is insane. This is an insane amount of violence that the Israeli civilians were subjected to. And then the next 10 months, people, the fuck? And then the next 10 months, people started, understanding. No, there is just fucking weird ass noises I'm hearing. In the next 10 months, people started coming to terms with maybe why the Palestinian population was resisting so aggressively towards Israel. And it wasn't necessarily anti-Semitism or Jew hatred or whatever the fuck people think it is, no matter how hard Israel tries to maintain that position. Anyway, I'm not asking you to immediately recognize they're in the wrong here. I'm simply asking that you just, you could just reconsider on your own. You don't have to do it publicly or whatever. Just seek within yourself. 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered over the course of the past 10 months with American rockets that Israel is dumping on the entirety of the Gaza Strip. The majority of those murdered are women and children and the elderly. The overwhelming majority, 2/3. Okay? 2/3. Don't you think that that is unimaginably radicalizing for people? There is no, what is the Palestinian people supposed to do? The so-called peace process is almost identical to this supposed ceasefire negotiation that the media keeps telling us Hamas is fucking up. Think about that. The historical so-called peace process, it played out in identical ways in which this current peace process, this current ceasefire negotiations is occurring. That's why people are so wrong about the way that the way that this was that's why people are so wrong when they talk about how Israel could never find a partner in peace. That narrative is just complete and utter nonsense. And so many people can see that that narrative was complete and utter nonsense by just simply looking at this round of the peace talks and the ceasefire negotiations, especially in the midst of Israel assassinating the guy who was doing the fucking ceasefire.
Powerful image to keep in mind. Trita, let's just, for the benefit of our viewers, hear from the U.S. Defense Secretary in the past few hours. Have a listen.
I don't think war is inevitable. I maintain that. I think there's always room and opportunities for diplomacy, and I'd like to see parties pursue those opportunities. If Israel is attacked, we certainly will help defend Israel.
Well, of course, there is a war in Gaza. What he's clearly referring to there is is answering a question about whether he believes there will be a regional escalation here off the back of what we've seen over the last, 25 hours or so, the assassination of two of Israel's key enemies. I mean, the US clearly still stands behind Israel, and you heard that from the defense minister. Perhaps we are, as Alex suggests, seeing a pivot of atmosphere here. But whether or not this administration in Washington is changing its position, should they not come out?
No offense, but assassinating terrorists in Iran is fucking hilarious, and you can't convince me it's not. This is, again, just like trying to be edgy and nihilistic and being like, dude, no, I'm just laughing at the situation. Yeah, dude, when your fucking cousin is drafted, when your cousin is sitting on top of a fucking carrier and gets hit with a Yemen rocket, okay, and is blown into fucking bits, I don't think you'll be laughing about that situation at all. Or if he's lucky and he actually does get deployed to Lebanon to defend Israel, by the way, and then comes back fucked up with his dick blown out, ruined for the rest of his fucking life, desperate for medical attention that the American government will not give him, you won't be fucking laughing about that. You won't be laughing. You won't be edgy and cool and nihilistic about that reality, okay? Stop behaving like fucking animals. Not even animals. Animals have at least an interest in like self-preservation, right? It's a primal instinct. This is what I'm talking about. Like, people do not comprehend what these actions, what kind of consequences these actions will have. I hate this notion that people only think about the worst aspects of it when it comes home to them. It's a very Republican principle. Oh, I'm homophobic until my son comes out as gay. Oh, I'm anti-LGBT until my daughter is a lesbian, like fucking Dick Cheney. You know what I mean? It's just like so unimaginably selfish. Yeah. You think the inflation crisis is bad right now? Wait until fucking Saudi oil refineries are blown up. Be desperate for that sweet Venezuelan oil now, if that happens.
With more specific parameters, with things as tense as they are now?
They certainly should, because I think, Secretary Austin is absolutely correct. War is not inevitable. There's still opportunities to prevent it, but those opportunities can only be actualized if the United States actually does something about it. And unfortunately, what we're not seeing is the type of parameters or red lines that are necessary in order to make sure that the Israelis do not escalate matters in this way. But now they have, and they've done it in the most audacious.
Israel has learned all of the worst lessons, that they can violate every red line with the Biden administration and not see any punishments, not see any consequences whatsoever. Why would they do anything different? Benjamin Netanyahu selfishly wants the war to continue so he doesn't go to jail after the war is over, and he is going to do everything in his power to stay in office to avoid legal scrutiny. Okay? And yes, that does include opening up another front in the war, maybe even two fronts in the war, specifically so that he can bring the United States into the fucking fold. That's it.
Way aimed at maximum embarrassment of Iran, which means that it also maximizes the likelihood that, unfortunately, Iranian will respond and by that trigger an escalatory spiral. The United States does not want to see a regional war and doesn't want to get dragged into that war. But what Netanyahu has done here is exactly that. He has triggered what would likely lead to an escalation that very well could drag the United States into the war. If the U.S. doesn't want this, then it needs to do something about it instead of just publicly expressing support for Israel's right to defend itself while completely neglecting the United States' own interests to stay out of these type of wars.
I just want to look at this through the lens of the US and Iran and its on-off diplomacy, as it were. We have today a new Iranian president who was deemed to be, at least in principle, a better interlocutor, be that directly or indirectly with the US at this point, and at this point it is indirectly, with regard any sort of future talks. Where does this all leave that? You're an expert in this. You closely watch the US-Iranian relationship, which is, of course, extremely tenuous. Where is it today, July the 31st?
Well, it is in a much worse situation than it was yesterday. There was a small opportunity. Pezeshkian ran on a platform of seeking renewed diplomacy with the United States, regardless of whether there would be Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, or even Donald Trump in the White House. But this would obviously still be a very tough battle, both internally in the United States and internally in Iran. But that battle, the battle of actually being able to create the political space and the political will for sustained diplomacy that actually can lead to success, has now become all the more difficult, if not impossible, in the short and the medium term because of this assassination.
Alex, Trita, very much appreciate it. Your time, invaluable for us.
Oh, there can be no ambiguity about this, says Sheamus. Israel wants total war. It wants to drag America into an NSIG that will secure its existence forever. It does not want de-escalation. It does not want peace. It wants the initiation of murder-suicide pact built into the U.S. alliance. And now, Iran's leader orders attack on Israel for Haniyeh killing, officials say. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei ordered retaliation after a humiliating security failure as Iran once again balances showing strength against the risk of escalation. Mr. Khamenei gave the order at an emergency meeting of Iran's Supreme National Security Council on Wednesday morning, shortly after Iran announced that Mr. Haniyeh had been killed, said the 3 Iranian officials, including 2 members of the Revolutionary Guards. They asked their names not to be published because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Iran and Hamas have accused Israel of the assassination. Israel, which is at war with Hamas on the Gaza Strip, has neither acknowledged nor denied killing Mr. Haniyeh, who was in Tehran for the inauguration of Iran's new president. Israel has a long history of killing enemies abroad, including Iranian nuclear scientists and military commanders. Support for Israel in the West isn't as strong as they want us to believe it is. The actions are irrational and stink of desperation. Israel won't have U.S. backing unless it's in direct existential danger, which Netanyahu's trying to manufacture. Yeah, no, I agree. But the reality is, especially in terms of foreign policy, the American government rarely ever listens to the wishes of the population. Do you know what I mean? It's not like Americans broadly are like, oh yeah, no, I love fucking waging war all around the planet. If that was the case, then people that are running for president, like Donald Trump even, would not consistently try to present themselves falsely, but still present themselves as peaceful doves. Okay? Through almost 10 months of war in Gaza, Iran has tried to strike a balance, putting pressure on Israel with sharply increased attacks by its allies and proxy forces in the region, while avoiding an all-out war between the two nations. In April, Iran made its biggest and most overt attack in Israel in decades of hostility. But yeah, this is terrifying stuff.
In the Middle East, where 2 separate attacks in the space of just 12 hours on the senior leaders of 2 Iran-backed groups have raised fears of a wider regional conflict. Hamas says its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed during a visit to Tehran. Early indications suggest that he and his bodyguard died when a rocket hit the house where he was staying. Hamas has accused Israel of being responsible and described the killing as a grave escalation. Well, hours earlier, Israel said it had killed a senior Hezbollah figure in a strike in Beirut. The movement has confirmed that Fawad Shukra, one of its top military commanders, was in a building targeted by Israel, but hasn't confirmed his fate. Israel said he was responsible for an attack that killed 12 young people in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Well, let's start this hour with this report from Yolanda.
State media in Iran reporting the assassination in its capital of this top Hamas leader. A VIP guest, Ismail Haniyeh had been in Tehran along with the heads of other regional armed groups backed by Iran for the inauguration of the country's new president. But these were to be his last ever public appearances. In Gaza today, news of the killing worried many Palestinians about the implications for ending nearly 10 months of war with Israel.
If the leaders die, the political leaders, where are we going? Children are dying, the elderly are dying, the youth are dying. No one is looking out for us.
I hope this will be the last assassination, and God willing, the war will end after this assassination. We are all tired.
Ismail Haniyeh was from Gaza, but had recently lived in Qatar. He was seen as more pragmatic than hardline Hamas leaders still in the Palestinian territory, and had been overseeing talks on a ceasefire and the release of Israeli hostages. Now hostage families fear a setback.
I don't know how this news affects the deal, but I really wish for all of the forces around the world that will gather in order to bring our people back home. I hope our politicians will know to make this news into the release of the hostages.
Just hours before the Tehran attack, Israel had targeted a senior Hezbollah commander in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. It said he was responsible for a deadly rocket strike in the occupied Golan Heights last weekend. Fears were already running high about the possibility of retaliation and a wider war. Now, with Iran announcing 3 days of mourning for Ismail Haniyeh and vowing a harsh and painful response, the Middle East is even more on edge. Yolande Nell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, our correspondent.
What's sad is that less people care about the news in the Middle East, but now that the weird election is going on, I disagree. That's why I said, depending on what the retaliation looks like, depending on what the Iranian and the resistance groups' retaliation looks like to this action, okay, whether or not America fucking has to send troops in to the region, which they're already fucking moving in a way where they like are assuming a defensive posture for Israel, it can be a complete it can be a complete change in the narrative. Gray names have only one speed today. Yeah, me when cousin blows up brown kids in MENA. Me when cousin turns into a 22 a day statistic. Not understanding that blowing up brown kids in the Middle Eastern and North African region is the quickest way for that to happen. But people can't fucking connect the dots. Just like people can't connect the dots between every dollar being spent on the American military industrial complex is a dollar being taken away from fixing your fucking roads, fixing your goddamn healthcare, fixing your education. They just don't think about it like that at all. They only have one thing, and that is American military might. Okay? We're a mighty American military. What the fuck? Other people are going to find out why we don't have healthcare today. Okay? They gonna find out. They gonna learn today why we don't have healthcare. It's like, bro, why are you posting your fucking L's? Why are you posting your goddamn L's, dude? It's crazy.
Barbara Plett Usher is in Jerusalem. Now, Israel never comments on these types of assassinations, and I asked her whether this time was any different.
Not so far, no. And again, in the most recent briefing with the Prime Minister's office, the spokesperson was asked, and he said we're not commenting on this incident. But we do know that after the October 7th attacks, which were led by Hamas, the Israeli government had said that they were going to target all of the Hamas leadership, including the political leadership. So they have kept that threat current throughout the past 10 months. And there was a strike against a political leader, the deputy political leader in Beirut in January. So I think the entire region and probably most other people do believe it was the Israelis who carried it out. There was a brief moment on social media when a picture of Ismail Haniyeh was posted by the government press office here with a graphic saying on his graphic across his face saying eliminated, but that was taken down very quickly. So clearly the Israelis don't want to own this.
Yeah, they immediately were like, oops, never mind, we fucked up again. But they're so horny. It's the same principle because they're fucking hogs, okay? They're Nazis, they're reactionary, they're fascists. And what do we know about hogs in America? What do we know about Nazis in America? They can never help themselves. They have to reveal that they're fucking Nazis, okay? They can never just shut the fuck up and just stick to the dog whistles. They immediately leak it. They immediately turn around and they just openly admit that they are. They can't stop themselves. Israel's the same fucking way. They can't stop themselves.
Publicly, but as I said, they had been saying that they would be targeting the leadership. The question really is now why they would take this particular opportunity, especially when Mr. Haniyeh had been very heavily involved in ceasefire talks that many were hoping would result in at least a pause in the conflict in Gaza.
Yes, there is that obvious question about why now and the implications on exactly what you've just mentioned. But is anything being reported about how exactly this attack was done?
Yeah, we don't know exactly how it was done. We do know that it took place at 2 o'clock in the morning, according to Iranian media, and also that it was very precise because there were other Hamas leaders in the building, as well as a leader of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they were not hit. It was very much aimed, it seems, at Ismail Haniyeh, which means that the Israelis had very good intelligence about where he was. Perhaps because he was attending an event that had been pre-organized, the inauguration of the Iranian president, so maybe they had time to get intelligence on it. The Iranian media initially reported that it was a missile fired from outside the country, but there have been other reports saying that it was a rocket fired from a nearby building, which would implicate, which would suggest there was some inside help for the attack. But we don't have any confirmation of exactly how it was carried out.
That was Barbara Player-Tusher. Let's speak live now to General Amir Avivi, who's the founder of the Israel Defence and Security Forum. General, welcome here to the programme. What is Israel's strategy here?
Lady from Tel Aviv, Israeli general. Well, it seems like they've covered the broad swath of all parties involved in the matter. Yeah. Up next, our guest, Benjamin Netanyahu. He is going to contextualize why all of these actions were an absolute necessity and for the betterment of society, as a matter of fact.
Well, Israel's strategy, I think, from day one is very, very clear. There is a clear goal of war to eradicate Hamas as a military entity and governmental entity. Hamas has attacked, unprovoked, killed 1,200 Israelis, raped women, decapitated head of children, took hostages.
Yeah, I can't listen to this fucking dumb. I can't listen to this dumb fuck, dude. Yeah, unprovoked. There is no apartheid. Please, no politique. No politique. No Israel. Don't say anything bad about Israel. No politique. No politique. Only football. Only football. Terrorists. They are terrorists. Remember October 7. October 7. No politique. No politique. Good one, man. Thank you.
Two back-to-back developments that could push a region already on edge closer to the brink. First, the assassination of the political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh. We're hearing reaction and condemnation from countries across the Middle East and indeed the world. Hamas says he was killed in Tehran on Tuesday after meeting with Iran's newly elected president, which you see here, and attending his inauguration. Iran state media say an airborne guided projectile was used to hit the building where Haniyeh was staying in the Iranian capital. Hamas was quick to blame Israel, calling it a Zionist strike. Israel says it doesn't...
Yeah, I wonder why, dude. Yeah, it's so crazy that Hamas was quick to blame Israel. Damn.
...respond to reports in the foreign media. Haniyeh has been part of Hamas for decades and was a key figure in the stalled ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. Former Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, posting on X, says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing the region and the world to the brink of catastrophe. Sinez, Nick Payne-Walsh, Tamara Crancho, both here with me now. Nick, first of all, just explain what a key figure Haniyeh was and what we know about the attack.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of the leading, moderate, most recognisable faces of Hamas and somebody essentially deeply involved in all the negotiations that have been happening for months. That the US have invested so much political capital on the global stage and diplomatically over as well. What we know about this attack is pretty limited at this stage. We know an explosion occurred at about 2 o'clock in the morning in northern Tehran. It appears to be that only Haniyeh and his bodyguards were killed by this blast. That would suggest something that was pretty precise, pretty targeted, maybe quite limited. And the phrasing being used by Iranian state media here is a guided air...
I'm tripping that they aren't saying this is all Hamas' fault, Lamont. Bro, remember what I told you guys about how mainstream media has obviously two goals here. It's always to repackage State Department propaganda in a way that is appealing to the broadest audience, right? That's number one. But in order to do that, you also have to maintain an air of legitimacy and impartiality. If you drop the ball on impartiality and less people believe you and less people think you are legitimate, and right now there is a crisis in the United States of America, maybe even in the entire planet, with respect to the internet, with respect to so many like independent journalists coming out, so many independent outlets existing, where mainstream media has a very hard time looking like they are a legitimate source of news that you can rely on. Okay? And if people don't rely on them as a legitimate source of news, then they can't do the fucking primary job, the primary responsibility of like basically fucking reiterating State Department positions in a way that is impartial and that is objective. So for that reason, they have to retriangulate when certain things are very obvious, right? What is very obvious over the course of the last 10 months is that Israel is conducting an unimaginably violent affair in Gaza, okay? Even if you don't think it's a genocide, which of course it is, but even if you don't think it's a genocide, and many of your parents might not think it's a genocide, but they still see 40,000 dead Palestinians. They see all of the fucking death and destruction that Israel has brought forward, and they go, yeah, that's pretty messed up, actually. That's undeniable. So the mainstream media has to change course and kind of cover that with a little bit more honesty, because if they don't do that, then everyone's going to go, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I can see what's happening. I see it on TikTok. I see it on Twitter. I see it on every other outlet. Like, I know what's going on. I've seen it, even on accident, right? So for that reason, they have to change their trajectory. They have to change course. They have to change the dynamics a little bit. And when Israel is the one that is fucking up the peace process, fucking up the ceasefire negotiations consistently, and the American government keeps reiterating the position that it's actually not Israel, but it's actually Hamas that's fucking up the peace process, that's one thing, right? And they did that. They did that since Biden launched the ceasefire 3-phase proposal. Said it was the Israeli proposal, even though Israel kept saying, no, it's not. Actually, we hate this thing. We're not going to do it. And kept violating Biden's red lines. They could continue just reiterating that position over and over again. But when Israel fucking decapitates the leadership that is responsible, that is more moderate and responsible for the ceasefire negotiation on the Palestinian side, it becomes an unavoidable reality.
Damn, this guy's good.